Hello, fellow grave crawlers, and welcome to ZTV Pitches. I am Paiper Zombie, your host with you as always, and on today's episode, we'll be diving into Silent Hill. For those of you who have never seen this show before, I start by presenting the pitch, then talking about what inspired the pitch. The pitch will be told like a super short story that introduces the characters and gives an overview of the story from start to finish. If you've checked out Terminator 7, it'll be a lot like that, only 5 episodes shorter. So, without further ado, welcome to Silent Hill. Silent Hill opens by introducing us to our protagonist, Anita Parker. She's mom to her beautiful baby girl, Stacia, wife to her loving husband, Gerald, and renowned nonfiction writer and sociologist to the world. Anita is currently on tour promoting her newest book, which has taken her away from home and family to the state of Virginia. It leads to a busy and somewhat trying day that Anita is glad to see go when she returns to her hotel room that evening, takes a nice long shower, and goes to sleep. When she wakes up the next day, it's to an unexpected surprise. She is no longer in her hotel room. Instead, she's in a room that looks like an infirmary. She's in a bed that she did not go to sleep in and dressed in a white gown that she did not have on when she went to sleep. A nurse enters the room and sees that Anita is awake. Anita asks where she is and learns that she is, in fact, in an infirmary and recovering from an affliction called black fever. Black fever is a powerful infection that affects the brain and targets the memory. Anita has been in the infirmary for 2 weeks, battling and now recovering from it. Anita asks if Gerald has been notified. The nurse surprises Anita by asking, "Who is Gerald?" Upon finding out who Gerald is, the nurse breaks some bad news to Anita. Black fever eats away a person's real memories and replaces them with fallacy in the form of dreams and hallucinations. So the life and family Anita thinks she has isn't and never was real. In reality, Anita is one of the many residents of Silent Hill, Virginia, and works on the Gillespie plantation. Yes, plantation. Anita, just like the rest of the Negro population of Silent Hill, is a slave. And slaves are not allowed to pair or marry, and are not allowed to bear children unless instructed to do so. Anita asks how slavery is still a thing, and learns that it's been the one and only thing. An attempt to abolish it was made during the American Civil War long ago, but that attempt had failed. Anita asks what year it is, and finds out that the year is current. Thinking she's in a nightmare, Anita tries to wake herself up by snatching out her IV, jumping out of the bed, and going for a pair of scissors, with the plan to use them to stab herself awake. This brings the attention of the white orderlies, who subdue Anita before she can get to the scissors and strap her down with restraints to her bed, where all Anita can do is wait for the nightmare to end. But it never does. Not even as the rest of the hours of the day go by. And not even when Anita goes to sleep that night. For she wakes up the next morning, still in the infirmary. And she wakes up to the quiet sobbing of another patient. The patient, an adult female, is named Sybil. And she's trying to come to terms with the fact that the world around her is not a dream. It's a topic that gets Anita and Sybil talking, before the nurse Anita met the previous day interrupts to get both ladies ready to start their rehabilitation. Because the black fever has destroyed their true memories, Anita and Sybil will have to be retaught the world and its ways. And they will also have to be reacclimated to labor. Given their skin color, Anita and Sybil's stay in the infirmary isn't free. They must work to pay it off. During work, Anita and Sybil learn the harsh rules of the game. What a white superior says goes. Any acts of defiance or resistance will be met with corrective force. And slaves are not allowed to talk to each other. They are only allowed to speak when spoken to or called upon by their white superiors. After the evening dismissal from a grueling day, Anita and Sybil meet another black fever survivor named Harold, who was working off his black fever debt as a fix-it man and janitor. Their interaction isn't long though, as men are not allowed to be in the women's ward when women patients are present. The next day, an older nurse is the one to come in and get Anita and Sybil started on day 2 of their rehabilitation. Later that night, when she's able to catch Anita alone, the older nurse asks Anita what her maiden name is. When Anita tells her, the older nurse asks if Anita had a grandmother named Isabel. When Anita answers yes, the older nurse gasps and falls silent for a moment. When she speaks again, the older nurse tells Anita that 10 years ago, she too got sick with black fever. While she was under its thrall, she dreamt she lived in another life, in another place. And one of those people in that life was Isabel. Isabel had pictures of Anita in her home, and that's how she recognized her. Both women are at a standstill for how they both could have dreamt and or hallucinated being in the same place. But the older nurse goes on to ask Anita if she has drawn anything or made anything since her recovery. When the older nurse was recovering from her bout with black fever, she crafted 3 necklaces, despite having no idea how she learned to make them. She also began to draw out what eventually became a map, with places and streets she did not recall seeing. Over time, the older nurse found out that all of the places and streets that she'd drawn on her map actually existed in Silent Hill, and were in the exact locations that she'd put them in. But the older nurse had no idea what the map led to. But given the necklaces that she'd made, she knew it had to be something important. After she'd drawn the map, she'd written down 5 instructions on its backside. The first was put the talisman on after the sound of the horn. And that's why the older nurse had never tried to use the map herself. Because anytime there was the sound of the horn, it meant that a slave was trying to escape. And if a slave was trying to escape, then the pyramid head would be sent out to hunt them down. Nobody knew what the pyramid head was. Some thought it was an animal. Others thought it was a machine. But no slave that had ever tried to run had ever escaped it. The abused and lifeless bodies of those who tried were displayed in the town square at the hanging tree as proof. And for the bodies of those who were never displayed, rumor had it that it was because the bodies were too horribly mutilated to be displayed. The older nurse admits that she was too terrified to run in the beginning, and now, 10 years later, too old to try. But meeting Anita has reignited her suspicions that something isn't right about Silent Hill. Later on, Anita shares all of this information with Sybil. Sybil suggests that Anita get the map so that they can follow it. And as far as the pyramid head goes, Sybil would rather die trying to run instead of continuing to live in the hell that they're in. And by the time Anita wakes up the next morning, she too finds herself willing to take the risk. Together with the older nurse, Anita, Sybil, and Harold, who overheard the older nurse's and Anita's conversation the previous night because he was cleaning the outhouses, orchestrate their plan to escape and follow the map. In the early hours of the next morning, Anita, Harold, and Sybil get ready to run. They review the 5 instructions on the map that the older nurse told them to follow. Number 1 is, put talisman on after the sound of the horn. Number 2, follow the map and do not deviate from its path. Number 3, be quiet. Number 4, hide. Number 5, smash against its head. Anita, Harold, and Sybil start their run and are 15 minutes into it before they hear the sound of the horn. They immediately put their talismans on, and as they continue to run, they witness a rather odd occurrence as the environment around them begins to change. Everything from the buildings to the trees suddenly grow older and more decrepit looking. And a misty, unnatural fog falls over the outdoors. Anita, Harold, and Sybil travel onward despite their fear, and come to realize that there seems to be no more people and no more animals around. While traveling through a rather unholy looking church, Anita, Harold, and Sybil hear the sound of something scraping along something else coming from behind. They turn around just in time to see the pyramid head round the corner. The pyramid head is a 7-foot tall, solidly built, muscle-bound man with strange tattoos covering his bare arms, chest, and back. His lower half is clothed in what looks like the bottom half of a dark-colored robe, and his head, face, and a portion of his chest are covered by a large metal helmet that resembles a pyramid in shape. The pyramid head is also carrying a large serrated blade that looks like it would be too heavy to be used practically. That was the source of the scraping sound, as its dull edge was being dragged across the ground. The pyramid head gives chase upon spotting its targets, and quickly proves that the blade's size is not a hindrance to him, as he's able to run with it at full speed while holding it up off the ground. It's only by making it into a convenience store across the street from the church that Anita, Harold, and Sybil are able to hide from the pyramid head, who stalks the store in search of them, before he ultimately leaves to search elsewhere. Once they're sure that the pyramid head is gone, Anita, Harold, and Sybil resume their journey and arrive at Alchemilla Hospital. The map shows an arrow pointing from it and connecting to a nearby school. Anita, Harold, and Sybil see why. A huge horizontal stretch of the road leading forward has collapsed into a deep canyon. While in the hospital, our three encounter what they think are statues that look like adult males and females done up in various poses. Harold makes the mistake of getting too close to one and finds out that statue will move when it lurches at him and latches him in a tight hug. The center of the hugger's body begins to radiate a slow, pulsing glow, and the creature lets out a long moan that sounds like the word warm. Anita and Sybil save Harold from the hug of death, and together they flee. The hugger pursues for a short while, on legs that seem to forget how to walk at times, before it slows and freezes in place again. Anita, Sybil, and Harold navigate the rest of the way through the sleeping huggers to the hospital basement, where they find an access tunnel that leads them into the basement of the school. Upon reaching the first floor of the school, they find more huggers. Only, these don't look like adults. They look like children. And they're even more dangerous. They snap to life from a farther distance than the adults. They move like their legs know what walk is, and they pursue for longer. It causes for one nasty chase through the school to find the darn exit. And once they do find it, it's just in time to meet the pyramid head as he walks in through the doors. All of the hugger children fall back into their frozen state at the pyramid head's arrival, and he begins pursuit. Sticking to rule number 2, Anita, Sybil, and Harold have to use both the first and second floors of the school, along with rules number 3 and 4, to evade the pyramid head and get back to the exit doors. But Sybil trips along the way, and that gives the pyramid head the time he needs to get into range and launch his blade like a spear at her to strike her down before she can reach the exit doors. Knowing that there's nothing that they can do to save her, Anita and Harold continue the escape. But the pyramid head stays behind and removes his blade from Sybil. Then, he goes to her body and puts his hands on her back. what little life there is left in Sybil comes out in a few shuddery gasps as her body takes on the same ashier than ash color as a hugger. And when her eyes suddenly snap back open and she rises to her feet, she takes a few awkward steps before she slows and falls frozen. Anita and Harold get no time to grieve as they continue the trek to the final destination of Lakeside Amusement Park. But in order to get to the amusement park, they must lower an upright bridge. The noise of the bridge lowering brings the Pyramid Head, who intercepts Anita and Harold before they can make it outside to the bridge. Harold has to sacrifice himself in order to keep the Pyramid Head busy with the chase, so that he won't return to the control room and shut off or reverse the bridge. It gives Anita the chance she needs to make it across the bridge before the Pyramid Head is able to reverse its direction. Darkness descends just as Anita makes it to the Lakeside Amusement Park. As Anita treks through, she encounters a pack of creatures that look like mutated canines that immediately notice her and give chase. Anita flees to the safety of a worn-down concession stand, where she's able to create a makeshift torch and use it to force the vile pack of creatures away when she burns a few of them when they try to attack her. Hurriedly, Anita makes her way to the funhouse, where she finds a door with a large circular symbol on it. When she opens it and goes through, she finds herself in what appears to be a small control room, with another door at the opposite end with the same symbol on it. The control room is operating and isn't old and decrepit, and two unexpected guests are present. One is an elegantly dressed white female, and the other is the Pyramid Head. The white female applauds Anita for making it as far as she did, and introduces herself as Alessa Gillespie, the daughter of Anita's owner, Dahlia Gillespie. When Anita doesn't buy that as truth, Alessa decides to do Anita a service before she allows the Pyramid Head to complete his service. Alessa tells Anita the truth. They are in another version of the world, one where the Confederates defeated the Union Army, which let the Confederates adhere to the rules of their Constitution and allowed them to continue their way of life. However, only the southern states of the Confederacy exist in Alessa's world. Every 10 years, the barriers between Alessa's and Anita's worlds weaken at certain points. With the right know-how, one can take advantage of that weakness and create a door between the worlds. That's when catchers step through from Alessa's world in order to replenish the slave population by abducting African Americans from Anita's world and bringing them back to Alessa's. When the abductees find that they're not dreaming, combined with the tale about Black Fever and the superb performance by the slave population that had been naturally raised in Alessa's world, 99% of abductees came to accept her world as theirs. But for that 1% that didn't and tried to run, they would find themselves in a world changed, with the Pyramid Head sent out to hunt them down. And no matter how far that 1% ran, the Pyramid Head always made his catch. Alessa then sicks the Pyramid Head on Anita. As he moves in to capture her, room number 5 on the map suddenly makes sense to Anita. When the Pyramid Head gets close enough, she snatches off her talisman and smashes it against his helmet. This causes the Pyramid Head to stagger and reel in pain. It gives Anita the time she needs to run past the bewildered Alessa and make it to the door. She opens it and runs through and finds herself in the interior of a completely different building. As Anita runs, Alessa comes through the doorway in pursuit, but looks down at her watch and stops. Glaring at the fleeing Anita, Alessa yells out, "10 years, girl, 10 years." Before she returns to the door, steps back through it, and closes it. Seconds later, the door crackles with energy and folds in on itself until it vanishes completely, leaving behind a blank wall. 10 years later, we see that Anita has reunited with her husband and daughter, who is now a teenager. Although they live in seclusion, Anita still works as a writer and is celebrating the anniversary of her only fiction novel, Silent Hill. Fans of the story decide to hold a week-long event to see if the supposed doorway will appear. Anita watches every day, and as each day passes and no door appears, Anita rests easier and easier. Until the afternoon of the last day, while Gerald and Stacia are at the grocery store, and Anita is home alone. She hears a sound coming from the back part of the house. A sound similar to something heavy being dragged across the ground. Anita rises from her seat in alarm as the sound draws closer, closer. And just as whatever is causing the sound is about to come around the corner and enter the room that Anita is in, we hear Alessa's last words. 10 years, girl. 10 years. Before we slam to black and Silent Hill was inspired by the 2020 film Antebellum. Well, actually, the original trailer for the film. The look and feel of it just gave me Silent Hill vibes for some reason. So of course, I was excited to check it out. When I got to, though, found out that the movie was not a darn thing like the trailer. It was supposed to be a horror movie, but there was nothing horror about it. It wasn't eerie, it wasn't tense, it wasn't scary. Like, it wasn't a bad movie, but it could have just been so much better. So after that letdown, I started thinking about how Antebellum would be if it kept the same core concept. Wait a minute. I'm about to give spoilers for Antebellum. So if you don't want that, skip forward like 15 seconds. Okay. Keep the same core concept of the protagonist being kidnapped and taken to a place where the people there live as if the Confederates won the American Civil War, and add some Silent Hill influence into it, while making sure that the story complements both the narrative of Antebellum and Silent Hill. So for that Silent Hill influence, I drew from 5 of the games of the series. The original, of course, Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 4, and Silent Hill Shattered Memory. The original inspired quite a few of the character names, as well as being the source of all the major locations that our fleeing trio travels to. The original also helped inspire the look of the outdoor environment once our 3 are pulled into the world changed, especially with the random canyons that like to ruin entire blocks. My only draw from Silent Hill 2 is, of course, Pyramid Head. While he's not a slave hunter in the game, I felt like the role of one fit him perfectly for this project. I wanted him to be the main thing terrorizing our characters, instead of having a whole bunch of random creatures running around. I felt like that would have taken away from the moments when we do get to see the creatures, and it would have just made their presence old and boring real fast. Silent Hill 4 inspired traveling between realities, having doorways between realities, and the sound that both the adult and child huggers make when they're sucking the life out of something. And last but not least, Silent Hill Shattered Memory inspired the altered memories concept, as well as the action being paced around running and hiding instead of direct confrontation. Because, we all saw what Pyramid Head could do from a distance. Who the hell do you know that would want to get closer to that? The adult and child huggers are my own creation, and are the soulless husks of the slaves that Pyramid Head had to put to death rather than capture and return for sacrifice. And the canine creatures are also soulless husks, but they are of the dogs that were taken along on the attempted escapes, that were put to death rather than captured. The world changed that our 3 characters make their trek through is in all of the Silent Hill games, and is actually 2 separate places called the Fog World and the Other World. I went ahead and combined them because Fog World is just the real world but foggy, and the Other World physically turns the environment into an industrial-esque nightmare and is where the majority of the creatures are. I felt like the Otherworld transformation was too extreme for this project, so I went with the environment taking on the older decrepit look as a happy medium. The only thing I drew from the movie series is that Silent Hill is located in West Virginia instead of Maine, where the game sets it at. I did this because Maine was never a Confederate state, and because West Virginia is an important location in the American Civil War. West Virginia is the place where the Union Army was able to gain a major foothold against the Confederate Army, which would eventually lead to the Confederate Army's defeat and the end of the American Civil War. So to me, it just felt right to have Silent Hill be in such a pivotal place. And with that having been said, I do believe that's it. I hope you all enjoyed this. And if you have any questions, please feel free to post them. And if you have any constructive feedback, please feel free to post that too. Constructive feedback is always accepted here. I'm not a snowflake. I promise it won't make me melt. Alright. So, thank you once again for watching, and I will catch you next time.